Hello and welcome to another episode of Habeas Humor. Well, good news and bad news, guys. The good news is that the world is rid of Rush Limbaugh.
And the rest of you feminazis, here's the deal. If we are going to pay for your contraceptives and thus pay for you to have sex, we want something for it. And I'll tell you what it is. We want you to post the videos online so we can all watch. We're not disrespectful to anybody. What is it with all of these young, single white women, overeducated? Doesn't mean intelligent. When are we disrespectful? If any race of people should not have guilt about slavery, it's Caucasians.
Fuck that guy. The bad news is that the United States Senate failed to convict Donald Trump in his second impeachment trial. And that failure was caused by Republicans. The Republican and Democrat parties are different from each other. Neither party may be what you or I want them to be, but they are different from each other. Their representatives vote differently on various issues of great importance. You should know what your representatives vote for and against. When you fail to remain informed and active in politics and just say, everyone sucks, you do so at your own peril and at the peril of people more vulnerable than you. Please don't do that. I have to tell you, I am fed up with the American system. A system that makes so many people do so many bad things is wrong. The products of this system are wrong, from the top to the bottom. From the U.S. president, who gets away, at least politically, with crime, to the working people in America, whose economic security has become increasingly precarious for the last several decades, every year working harder and longer and getting less for it, to the people who live in abject poverty. People who, for the most part, we keep out of sight and out of mind, and then wait and hope that the system will somehow help them. But it never does. Is it so radical to say that this system doesn't work and we need a new one? I don't know exactly what, but it needs to be a lot more compassionate and egalitarian than what we have. We really need strong bargaining power in the labor force. We need every worker to be in a powerful union that serves the interests of its members. Just for starters, we need those things. What we cannot have is capitalist corporations whose legal duty to their shareholders is to fuck people over to maximize profits. Oh no, did Sharon just go all Occupy Wall Street on us? Look, call me a socialist, I probably am. Call me a communist, I don't think I am. Call me an anarchist, I don't know if I am. Call me whatever name you want. But think about this question. How has capitalism been working out for you? Are you barely getting by? Does it seem like you have no control over anything besides your TV remote? Capitalism won't fix that. It can do better than it's doing now. When people really exercise their voting power and stuff, we get little improvements like higher minimum wages and better government oversight. But those things only make life a little better for some of the population, and they get eventually undone based on who all gets into office next. There are enough resources for everyone to live a comfortable life, but that will never happen as long as a few rich assholes are allowed to have multiple billions of dollars and huge, powerful companies are allowed to run roughshod over the people and our environment. That's another thing, by the way. We are so fucking going to die from global warming. What's my plan? I have absolutely no idea. This is a global mess far beyond the power of my brain to solve. I just want my life and your life to be better so that maybe one day we can have more to look forward to than watching mindless, trashy television. Hell yes, that was a smooth segue. Play the bumper. Please be on notice that this content will contain some mentions of suicide, gun violence, domestic abuse, terrorism, and programming on TLC. Whether or not you have watched the TV show 90 Day Fiancé, you certainly are familiar with the phenomenon of Trainwreck television. This is a genre of so-called reality television in which things go terribly, terribly wrong for the people portrayed, and we the audience get to watch as the whole disaster unfolds in front of our eyes. Like a real train wreck, these spectacles are awful and tragic, but also dramatic and exciting. Jerry Springer is one of the earliest examples of Trainwreck television. The Jerry Springer Show, if you are too young to know the reference, was an afternoon talk show in the same vein as Geraldo and Donahue, two more shows that are probably too old for you to know anything about. Jerry Springer's format was pretty close to those shows when it premiered in 1991. Think Dr. Phil, maybe that's the closest thing we have now. People came on the show with problems, or sometimes just a nice recipe for chocolate cake or something. It was afternoon entertainment, like mostly for stay-at-home moms. During its run of 28 seasons and over 4,000 episodes, however, the Jerry Springer Show evolved from a mainstream talk show into a circus of the dysfunctional. By the late 1990s, Springer was one of the most popular daytime television programs, if not the most popular, and it is exactly because the audience was guaranteed a train wreck every time they tuned in. The guests on Springer would usually be in some kind of love triangle or love polygon, or sometimes the show would just bring on a bunch of people who hated each other. Every episode would turn into a heated argument, and someone would inevitably assault someone else, and then the man in the back would say, "Everyone attack," and it would turn into a ballroom blitz.
You think I'm so scared of you, Lanita? I'm trembling.
Every single episode. Skeptics would claim that the guests were fake and the fights were staged, and there was probably a lot of truth to that. Still, it was years and years and years until the world got enough of the Jerry Springer Show, if it ever did. Was there legal trouble from Jerry Springer? Yes, but mainly just the police arresting guests for beating each other up on camera and sometimes off camera. There was also someone who committed suicide after appearing on Springer in 2018. That may have been why the show finally ended, or at least maybe it was a factor. What happened was that a guy came on the show with his fiancé. She confessed to him that she had been cheating with his good friend. This is a Jerry Springer Show cliché, but in this case, the poor guy killed himself after his appearance on the show. His family sued the show for wrongful death, and I am guessing the case settled. I do not know of any other cases of guests themselves suing the Jerry Springer Show. I would bet the show makes people sign waivers agreeing not to file any lawsuits against the show or even against each other. That is what I would have people do if I was a lawyer for the show. Among other things, waivers like that would enable the show to allow for physical fighting and rampant emotional attacks without liability to themselves. I do remember seeing a documentary about the Jerry Springer Show several years back in which it was shared that the show officially tells its guests no fighting is permitted. However, there is a fight on every episode, so draw your own conclusions about how serious that rule really was. Legally speaking, the show would also want guests to be barred from suing each other, so that the show would not have to be concerned with being pulled into other people's cases. There is the possibility of the production or its employees or Jerry Springer himself being named as defendants, or people who work on the show would be named as witnesses, or the show's records could be subpoenaed. Why have to deal with things like that if the show can just make guests sign a waiver that says, as a condition of being allowed to appear on the show, the guests give up their right to sue, either the show or each other. The Jerry Springer Show was such a cash cow that the entertainment history has kept Trainwreck television chugging along ever since. or I should say chewing along ever since. These shows are so profitable. They are cheap to produce, and audiences can't get enough of the bread and circus, so they tend to stay on the air for years. In 2010, the UK got big fat Gypsy weddings, and in 2012, the American version aired, which was called My Big Fat American Gypsy Wedding. I apologize for what I think is kind of an offensive word in those titles. To my knowledge, the preferred name for the people depicted in these shows is Roma or Romani. I made a judgment call and I did not bleep out the show's titles because I didn't think it was that level of offensive, but if that was wrong of me, please let me know. I have not seen the British version. The American version, which I have seen, is basically Jerry Springer, the reality show. I mean, Jerry Springer isn't literally in it, but it is the reality show version of the exact kind of stuff that would have been on the Jerry Springer show. All of that same kind of like family brawling, lowbrow drama, voyeurism that Springer made famous. The show is about Romanis living in, I believe, North Carolina, and just about every person on the show engages in appalling behavior. Just checking off every trailer trash stereotype box imaginable: drug use, crime, extreme bigotry, family feuding, and of course the show's central focus, child marriages.
On my big fat American Gypsy wedding,
I don't step on toes. I knock people out.
Oh, no, come on. I love him. That's all that matters.
a Gypsy birthday creates a family feud.
She's not having kids at 14 years old.
If
That's
what
insane.
She wants to do. That's
insane.
And a Gypsy wedding ends in disaster.
Why is she throwing? Oh my God, are you serious?
It is difficult for me to believe that this show is not fake or mostly fake. If you prefer your Trainwreck TV more realistic, or at least seeming to be more realistic, and with maybe a little more heart, then allow me to introduce the main event for this episode of Habeas Humor, TLC's hit reality show 90 Day Fiancé. If you have never watched 90 Day Fiancé, then honestly, you're probably better off. For every unit of viewing pleasure I have ever gotten watching this show, I have also gotten at least 2 units of frustration. It's one of those things that just makes you realize why nearly half of all American voters chose Trump in 2020. Because you watch it and you're like, are these people for real? What is wrong with them? This can't be my country. This can't be my planet. The storylines on the show might be fake, but the stupidity is real, and the lack of self-awareness displayed by the people on the show, again, so frustrating. Every couple that appears on 90 Day Fiancé has a different kind of story, at least somewhat, a little bit of uniqueness in every single couple. Therefore, there's a different kind of train wreck each time, so that keeps it interesting. But there's a theme that definitely runs through every one of the stories in some way. The theme of Americans catfishing and foreigners gold digging, and what happens when those two types come together and, stop being polite and start being real. A classic example, maybe the classic example of this from 90 Day Fiancé is the storyline of Colt and Larissa. When we meet Colt, he is a 30-something American who has previously not had much of any dating life. Larissa is a 30-something Brazilian who has kids, though they do not appear on the show. The two met online, as so many people do nowadays. They got together in person one time and got engaged, and then they obtained a K-1 visa from the U.S. government. The K-1 is a visa that allows a foreign person to enter the U.S. in order to get married to the American person who petitioned for the visa. Once the marriage takes place, the foreign person can apply for permanent resident status, also known as a green card. The K-1 visa comes with a 90-day ticking clock. Once you enter the U.S. with a K-1 visa, you have 90 days to get married or you have to leave the country. You also have to spend a whole night in a haunted house and find a secret buried treasure before it falls into the wrong hands. to tell you the truth, I'm a little fuzzy on the exact details. But once Colt and Larissa come together on 90 Day Fiancé, we quickly get to see that they are mismatched. I'm not talking about age or beauty. Those are such problematic things to talk about in general with regard to whether two people belong together, so to speak. I will say that on 90 Day Fiancé, there are couples with large age differences, and in every case that I can think of, the older partner is the American. I can also say that on 90 Day Fiancé, there are many couples that are, I guess, mixed in terms of the degree to which each partner conforms with conventional Western beauty standards. And in every case I can think of, the less conventionally beautiful person is the American. All that said, I did not look at Colt and Larissa on screen and go, "Oh my stars, what an unusual pairing." Is "oh my stars" a Southern saying? Is that why I just started channeling Blanche Dubois or Blanche Devereaux or someone named Blanche? Write in and let me know. Okay, back to Colt and Larissa. Superficially, nothing very out of the ordinary about them, but there are issues. Oh yes, there are issues. I mean, obviously, they're on 90 Day Fiancé. Their story is being documented for a trash TV show so that we, the public, can watch this train wreck slowly and in piecemeal fashion over about 12 episodes. The first sign that something is afoot comes when Colt picks up Larissa at McCarran International Airport in his hometown of Las Vegas, Nevada. Fans of the show know this scene well. After months apart, Colt and Larissa reunite at baggage claim. Larissa has left her whole life behind in Brazil. She's taken a long flight or series of flights, deplaned, gone through customs, and finally, there she is. And there he is, her fiancé, Colt, along with the 90 Day Fiancé production crew. She's here in Las Vegas, ready to start cohabitating with her fiancé. He's here to greet her before they head home to live happily ever after together. But what's this? Colt is standing there empty-handed, not holding any flowers or romantic welcome gifts of any kind. Really, Colt? Are you thoughtless or just cheap? Or both? Let me tell you a story. The first time I came to Ohio to visit my partner Greg at his house, I took a 1-hour flight from Newark to Cleveland. It was a little puddle jump of a trip. Greg met me at the airport and I had not expected him to bring me anything. It had not been that long since we last saw each other and I had not come from super far away. I could have driven the distance between my house and his house in 6 hours or so. The first time being together at his home was special for sure, but not like a major life event. So you can imagine my surprise when I meet Greg at the airport and find that he has completely subverted my expectations. He made this really cute sign, and I think he got me flowers or a card or maybe both. I actually cannot exactly remember, but it was so cute and so sweet, and he really made me feel like how much he cares. In contrast, we have Colt. How much does he care? Not apparently much. No flowers, no gift or romantic gesture of any kind for Larissa when she arrives from Brazil. This is one of our first indications that Colt may not quite be the kind of guy that women dream about. I mean, maybe I'm being hypercritical. Maybe Larissa won't even notice the lack of flowers.
Larissa! Hey!
Where's my flowers?
You look great.
What is my flowers?
No flowers, honey. I'm sorry.
So, will you buy to me flowers? When I saw Colt at the airport, I thought that he will bring me some things like maybe chocolate, flowers, to show me how much I'm important to him now that I finally moved to America. But when I saw him without nothing in his hands, I thought, what's going on? That is the flowers, Colt.
Yep, those are the flowers.
So?
I'm not gonna buy you $20 from flowers with a
$20?
vending. Yeah. I find out how much parking is since I arrived so early for you.
He should bring flowers.
Oops, I think she noticed. Boy, did she notice. This is our first indication that Larissa is into getting gifts and tokens of adoration, like really into it. And if she does not get them, she will not filter her disappointment. In US culture, we have a term for this personality trait, high maintenance. Not my favorite expression. It's a term that sort of objectifies women, and I've never heard it used for anyone but women. It kind of compares women to cars and stuff. On the other hand, some women proudly wear the label high maintenance, and who am I to judge them? Absolutely nobody. So it becomes apparent from the get-go that Larissa is high maintenance, and again, no judgment. But what then is she doing with Colt? By this point in the show, we have learned some additional things about Colt. He's an average Joe with an average job, living in an average Las Vegas tract house, driving a shitty little car with no air conditioning in the desert. And oh yeah, one other thing. Colt lives with his mother, Debbie. And not in a cute sitcom-y way. Debbie is not a Mother Winslow or even a Sophia. She's more like Norman Bates's mom. Once we meet Debbie, we know she is going to throw a big wrench into the gears of Colt and Larissa's love machine. Based on Larissa's reactions within the first hour that she's in Las Vegas, it does not seem as though Colt informed Larissa beforehand about his lifestyle in any detail at all. Did he mislead her? 90 Day Fiancé does not show us any conversations between Colt and Larissa regarding what exactly he promised to provide her or what he allowed her to assume he would provide her. So I don't know if he misled her. But what we do get to see is how tremendously disillusioned Larissa is with regard to pretty much everything all the time. You see, she had been expecting this Las Vegas. But what she gets is this Las Vegas.
What do you think?
I thought that was another place, more beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Private,
It's true.
But it's okay. It's here. Oh, babe, I can't believe that I come here. When Colt told me that we live with his mother, I got worried. I can't lie and say no, I love it.
Remember what I said about the running theme, gold digger and catfisher? And poor Larissa has been so catfished. Colt is basic AF, but at least there's his terrible personality. You've already witnessed some of it in the clips, and if you have not watched the show, you will just have to trust me. Colt is awful. Once again, I will put things into sitcom terms because that is just who I am. I have spent so much of my life watching sitcoms, especially in the 1980s and 1990s. I did not get out much during those decades. So I am going to say Colt's closest sitcom type is the creepy neighbor, like Larry from Three's Company, Quagmire from Family Guy, Charlie from Empty Nest. Colt is similar to these characters in that he is sex-obsessed, and he regards women as trophies to be won, But there's a difference. You see, Larry, Charlie, and Quagmire live alone in swell bachelor pads, and they apparently have game. Like, at least some fictionalized TV sitcom version of game, because they actually have sex with lots of women. Colt apparently can't get laid in Las Vegas. He has to go to Brazil. So if you've watched this show, then you know what happens. If you have not watched it, and you were rooting for Colt and Larissa, then I hate to have to tell you it ends badly, real badly. You might even call it a train wreck. Basically, they get married, and then 3 domestic violence cases later, they get divorced. There is never a lack of drama on 90 Day Fiancé. The stories will draw you in. But as I said earlier, I find 90 Day Fiancé and its various spin-offs incredibly frustrating to watch. Every episode, every scene, we see people making bad choices, engaging in destructive behavior, failing to communicate, ignoring red flags. It's like, so frustrating. Most frustrating of all is when there are 2 people on the show who are actually, genuinely into each other. This is one of the rarest types of stories on 90 Day Fiancé because most of the time, maybe one of the 2 people is in love. Most of the time. But if both people are in love with each other, they do not act like it. 2 people who do act like it are Brandon and Julia. This couple is featured on the season currently airing on TLC, which is about halfway through. Brandon is a 27-year-old, corn-fed American boy living in rural Virginia with his conservative, controlling parents, both of whom simultaneously cannot stand the idea of him having any kind of sex life and want to be fully informed and in control of every aspect of his sex life. How does that even work? Not well. Not well. Here are some examples. Dad Ron and Mom Betty forbid Brandon to share a bedroom with his fiancée Julia because no funny business under our roof, young man. But when Julia arrives, Mom Betty will immediately grill Julia about birth control over dinner during their first meal together as a family. That's Julia's welcome surprise from Betty. And Brandon gets one too, though he doesn't know it yet. He will when he gets back to his bedroom and sees the giant box of condoms Mom has left next to his bed. Oh, 90 Day Fiancé, you've brought us to the sight of such an epic shitstorm waiting to happen. And I do mean waiting to happen because the real bad stuff has not even begun. Wait till Julia finds out that Brandon's parents run a pig farm and a quasi-puppy mill and they intend to use her as an unpaid shit shoveler. This, by the way, is the major legal issue I want to talk about because the internet has been abuzz about whether making Julia work on the farm should be considered acceptable or even lawful. These are good questions and I want to answer them because this issue goes far beyond this one family. Immigration and immigrant labor are topics of great moment to the U.S. citizenry. There is a widely held sentiment in this country that foreigners want to come here and take what belongs to quote-unquote real Americans. It's undeniable that a large number of people from outside the U.S. would like to try to better their lives by moving here. And sometimes people are so motivated that they resort to less than the most savory means. For example, people might overstay visitor visas, or they might sneak across the border, or they might even, marry their way in with the help of a good old K-1 visa. That last one really irks some people, like more than you would think. I am talking to the point of Congress investigating whether international marriages are like wrong for America. On the Ides of March 2017, United States Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican from Iowa, led a hearing as chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Have you met Chuck?
He's kind of a big deal in Washington, but it never went to his head. He knows where he came from. Born on a farm. Years of farming by day, factory work by night. Twice he opened his pay envelope to find a pink slip. Laid off and worrying about taking care of his family. He's traded the factory floor for the Senate floor, but still lives on a farm. Still shows up for work every day. Best attendance in the Senate. Every county, every year, listening to Iowans. He's never been to the Congressional Country Club, but he can find every Dairy Queen in Iowa. It's the work ethic of the farm, the factory of Iowa. Our Senator Chuck Grassley, named the hardest working senator, but still mows his own lawn.
I'm Chuck Grassley, and I approve this message.
Grassley was born in 1933 and has been in the Senate since the Carter administration. He mostly sucks, like in the ways that Republicans generally do. Anti-abortion, pro-gun, anti-EPA, that sort of stuff. He does have a working class background, and I kind of want to know what he got fired from those two jobs for. Made a huge deal out of it. Must be something interesting. Immigration seems to be one of Grassley's longtime pet peeves. Back in 2012, he temporarily blocked new legislation that was going to help speed up the visa system for highly skilled immigrants to be able to come and work in the U.S. He gave a speech in Congress where he said, quote, "I've spent a lot of time and effort into rooting out fraud and abuse in our visa programs, specifically the H-1B visa program. I have always said this program can and should serve as a benefit to our country, our economy, and our U.S. employers. However, it is clear that it's not working as intended, and the program is having a detrimental effect on American workers." End quote. Senator Grassley seems to have put a lot of time and effort over a lot of years into trying to decrease immigration, or as he calls it, rooting out fraud and abuse in the visa system. In his March 2017 hearing regarding K-1 Fiancé visas, he said the following in his opening remarks, quote, "Over the last several years, this committee has heard testimony about the various ways individuals scam our immigration laws using visa categories offered by our federal immigration system. Today, I want to talk about one category of immigration fraud that often goes unnoticed and forgotten: marriage fraud. Recent reports have shown that the number of foreign nationals who defraud American citizens to enter our country and receive a green card are increasing. In fact, petitions for the K-1 visa have been increasing every single year." End quote. I'm going to stop you right there, Senator. When you say recent reports have shown that the number of foreign nationals who defraud American citizens to enter our country is increasing, I could take that at face value for now and wait for you to show me the evidence later. But if your evidence is just going to be that petitions for K-1 visas have been increasing, that's not evidence of fraud or anything other than more people getting engaged. What do you have against love, Senator? Who hurt you? He goes on to say that the State Department issued 44,000 K-1 visas in 2016, which is 27% more than 2012. He doesn't give the numbers for the intervening 3 years. He also states that K-1 visa applications have about a 90% approval rate, and he does not provide any context for these numbers. So there's no way to tell just from hearing these statistics whether 44,000 K-1 visas in a year is too many or not enough, or far more likely could not be less significant to my life or to the lives of just about everyone who lives in the U.S., in which case, who gives a shit? Also, the U.S. contains about 180 million adult citizens of marriageable age. If 44,000 of those adults obtained K-1 visas in 2016, that is a rate of about 0.025%, or about 5 people out of every 20,000. 3 times that many people are killed with guns in the U.S. each year. So, for my money, gun violence is what the Senate should be talking about instead of fiancé visas Or, like, since 100% of the people in the US get sick and virtually 0% of us can afford to pay out of pocket for major medical treatment, maybe the Senate could talk about that instead of fiancé visas. I mean, I realize that this hearing about fiancé visas was just within the Judiciary Committee, but that didn't make this any less of a waste of time for the 22 very powerful senators on this very powerful committee. Here's another part of Grassley's speech. Quote, "Marriage provides one of the quickest paths to citizenship. That's why abuse of the K-1 visa category is very concerning. It provides foreign nationals almost immediate access to the United States and the benefits of U.S. citizenship. Petitions for K-1 fiancés are quickly processed and approved in about 8 to 12 months compared to the extensive wait time and restrictions in other visa categories." End quote. I mean, 8 to 12 months is kind of a long time. He, I guess, doesn't have a problem with like the years and years that people have to wait to get other kinds of visas, if they can get them at all. Actually, there is a link in the show description to the page for the USCIS where it lists all the different kinds of visas and like how many are allowed each year and stuff. In a nutshell, very few. Very few are allowed each year for anyone who wants to move to the US. So yeah, marriage is a quick way to citizenship, like when you look at it as a matter of comparison. The various ways in which someone in the world can become a US resident or citizen are not many, and any way that does not involve marrying a US citizen probably does take an inordinately long time. But okay, 44,000 people managed to get approved for K-1 visas in 2016. Again, not an amount of any real consequence, because even though marrying a US citizen might put someone on the fast track to gain citizenship, it's extremely difficult to do, like marrying someone in the US, like if that's your quest in life. The numbers are not in your favor. The distance is not in your favor. So like, maybe don't worry about it, xenophobes. And then Grassley says the following, quote, "Immigration and Customs Enforcement pursued more than 13,000 document and benefit fraud investigations reports from 2012 to 2015. That includes hundreds of arrests for marriage fraud, but the government cannot provide detailed statistics on the exact numbers." End quote. I think my Grassley impression started to kind of bleed into my Trump impression, so I apologize. I'm not good at impressions. So the last thing that Grassley said was that ICE has done a lot of investigations about reported marriage fraud. And there have been hundreds of arrests from 2012 to 2015. 4 years. Hundreds of arrests. But he cannot provide detailed statistics on the exact numbers. Why not? Why can't you give the exact numbers? Do you not know the numbers, or is it just that the numbers don't sound very impressive? He just said that for 2012 to 2015, a period of 4 years, there were 13,000 reports of fraud that ICE looked into. So that's a little over 3,000 reports each year. 3,000 people who called or wrote into ICE saying, "Hey, you should investigate this foreign person I know." And ICE said, "Okay, we will." And then from those investigations, there were quote-unquote hundreds of arrests. Hundreds of arrests over 4 years of people accused, not convicted, but accused of defrauding the government in some way connected to immigration documents. And Grassley claims that he cannot tell us whether this 4-year total of arrests, not convictions, is closer to 100 or 900. Just that it's hundreds. Let's do something for Grassley that he would never do for us. Let's be liberal and give him 500 arrests over 4 years, or 125 per year. Again, not convictions, just arrests, because Grassley didn't give us conviction numbers at all. So 125 people were arrested out of the millions of immigrants in the U.S. that are subject to the jurisdiction of ICE. How many of those 125 were part of the group of 44,000 people who came over that year on a K-1 visa? He doesn't say, but way to go, ICE, for sinking who knows how many millions of dollars worth of resources each year to catch 125 people who collected too many food stamps or whatever. Just off the top of my head, I can come up with a much worse violation of federal law that the government does zero about. Remember the Johnson Amendment? We've talked about it on the show before. The Johnson Amendment is a provision in the United States tax code that prohibits nonprofit organizations, including churches, from endorsing or opposing political candidates. Otherwise, they might lose their tax-exempt status. Many, if not most, churches in the U.S. are happy to avoid politics, but there is a subset of churches that hates the Johnson Amendment. They're pretty much all conservative churches that want to be able to do things like tell their congregants to vote for Donald Trump. So you know what they do? They tell their congregants to vote for Donald Trump, knowingly and intentionally violating the tax law. But they don't want to just violate the tax law. They want the government to know they are violating the tax law and that they just dare the government to do something about it. So ever since 2008, these churches participate in something called Pulpit Freedom Sunday. It was started by the Alliance Defending Freedom, which is a right-wing organization. The way to participate in Pulpit Freedom Sunday, which, by the way, excludes Jews and Muslims just by virtue of the day of the week, what you do, and it's I don't know, just watch this.
Does government have a right to muzzle ministers, to dictate what pastors can preach from the pulpit? Hello, I'm Tony Perkins, President of the Family Research Council and National Spokesman for Pulpit Freedom Sunday. Many pastors and churches have been bullied by the IRS into silence when it comes to preaching the whole counsel of God, particularly as it applies to electing godly leaders and promoting righteous and just laws. Their justification? A 1954 amendment to the tax code by then-Senator Lyndon Johnson. The amendment stated that nonprofit tax-exempt entities, which include churches, could not, quote, participate in or intervene in, including the publishing or distributing of statements, any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for public office, end quote. Well, since the amendment passed, the IRS has maintained that any speech that could be construed as supporting or opposing candidates for government office, including sermons from the pulpit, can result in loss of tax exemption. Now, after the amendment, churches faced a choice: speak freely on all issues addressed by Scripture and potentially risk their tax exemption, or remain silent and protect their tax exemption. Unfortunately, many ministers opted to remain silent, and therefore the church has mainly stayed on the sidelines. The quality of government, the character of our culture, has spiraled downward. But with God's help and your involvement, we can change that. Listen, what you preach from your pulpit is between you and God. The IRS has no right to censor your sermons. Your God-given right, as affirmed in the First Amendment, trumps any rule the IRS can use to try to silence you. I trust you would agree with the response Peter and the apostles gave to their governing officials. We must obey God rather than men. So we're asking you to do two things in response to this unconstitutional IRS rule. First, preach to your congregation. Sign up to participate on October the 2nd and preach a message about the upcoming elections. Traditionally, Pulpit Freedom Sunday pastors have spoken directly and scripturally about candidates, and that is your constitutional right. However, you may only want to keep it general and simply encourage your church members to exercise their stewardship responsibilities to be salt and light in the election process, and that is your right as well. Regardless, preach to your congregation on October the 2nd about their responsibility to participate in the upcoming elections. Second, petition Congress. Congress passed the unconstitutional Johnson Amendment in 1954. Now they need to repeal it so that the muzzle is taken off of ministers. Encourage your church members to call their members of Congress at area code 202-224-3121 and urge them to repeal the part of the IRS code called the Johnson Amendment. So petition Congress. Again, this joint project of Alliance Defending Freedom and FRC is not only biblically based, historically proven, constitutionally sound, but it's also backed by an army of ADF attorneys who are standing by to defend any church investigated by the IRS. In fact, since launching the initiative in 2008, the IRS has yet to prosecute a single church, not one. What has happened is that pastors have received overwhelming responses from their congregations, many receiving standing ovations. So, visit the website frc.org/pulpit to sign up. Mark your calendar for October the 2nd and join the Pulpit Freedom Sunday movement.
That video came out on September 28th, 2016, and Pulpit Freedom Sunday 2016 took place on October 2nd. You've probably already done the math in your head, but 1 month after Pulpit Freedom Sunday 2016, Donald Trump was elected 45th President of the United States. To date, as far as I know, there have been 0 consequences for any church that participated in Pulpit Freedom Sunday. If you know of any, please write in. Churches that violate the Johnson Amendment commit serious tax law abuse with serious consequences, and the U.S. Congress hasn't had hearing 1 about it. In fact, the only time the Johnson Amendment comes up in Congress is when right-wingers try to pass legislation repealing it. But instead, the people getting picked on are like the foreign citizens applying for K-1 visas so they can marry an American and move to the U.S. That's the sort of thing lawmakers will tell you is problematic. And the evidence points to xenophobia and racism being the real motivation behind things like this Senate investigation, Judiciary Committee hearing thing that Grassley had. He actually called it vows for visas. Oh, by the way, in case I did not already mention, no congressional action ever came out of this hearing that I know of. It was just a big show. The perception that immigrants to the U.S., documented or otherwise, come here and then abuse or exploit our systems in any significant way is ass backwards. If you think that your own life has been negatively affected by immigrants, it almost certainly has not.
Several candidates during the Fox Business Republican debate argued illegal immigration hurts the economy.
Frankly, we have to stop illegal immigration. It's hurting us economically.
I understand that when the mainstream media covers immigration, it doesn't often see it as an economic issue. For millions of Americans at home watching this, it is a very personal economic issue.
The truth is, economists generally agree illegal immigration boosts the economy as a whole, but there are some caveats. Undocumented immigrants offer a cheaper option when it comes to unskilled labor and can undercut the wages of their American counterparts. But they also fill a need for unskilled labor that American citizens haven't been fulfilling. More than half of American farm workers, for example, are undocumented. And that's without mentioning the billions undocumented immigrants pay into Social Security, which they have little hope of collecting. For Newsy, I'm Sebastian Martinez.
Social Security tax, Medicare tax, sales tax. Immigrants, documented and undocumented, contribute untold amounts of labor and money to the U.S. economy. And no, most of them don't go around committing crimes. They have to take a lot of shit from Americans, though. Low wages, discrimination, hate crimes. Who is taking advantage of whom most of the time? 90 Day Fiancé constantly shows Americans fretting about whether so-and-so is coming to the U.S. for the right reasons. And these people are usually the family and friends of the American half of the couple. And a lot of the times their concerns are at least partially understandable. Like, will this person my loved one is engaged to turn out to be a cruel heartbreaker? I get that. It's commendable to care about your friends and your relatives and try to have their back. However, it smacks of bigotry if you immediately suspect a foreigner of being on the make because they're a foreigner. Not only is that bigoted, but it presupposes that America is just better than whatever country so-and-so is from, and naturally everyone in the world wants to come live in America. I mean, they want it so much that they would rather be in a bad marriage here than a good marriage in their home country, or single. One of the storylines for every single couple on 90 Day Fiancé is having to win over the American family, who are always suspicious and who always place the burden of proof on the foreign fiancé to show that they are not a scammer. I will put an asterisk here and say that sometimes this might be completely set up by the producers of the show, but generally it does not seem like it is completely set up. You know what we pretty much never see on 90 Day Fiancé? We never see Americans showing that they are concerned for the person who is coming here on the K-1 visa, like concern for how that person might be abused. And what if they suffer negative mental health effects due to being homesick and being cut off from all their family and friends? What if there is a power imbalance in the relationship that results in abuse, physical or emotional? Sometimes there's a power imbalance because the foreign fiancé really does want to come live in the US, and generally that will be because they come from a less wealthy place and the life their partner can give them in the US is better. That's not always the case on 90 Day Fiancé, but it does apply to many of the couples, I would say around half. And there's not necessarily anything wrong per se with wanting to marry someone from a particular country or to want to marry someone with more wealth. A lot of people want to marry up, so to speak, and they shouldn't be judged for that by people who aren't in their shoes. And I guess that makes me a hypocrite for using the term gold digger earlier, since gold digger, at least these days, is a pejorative term. I have tried to draw a distinction between people who get into relationships to use people and people who get into relationships for like the so-called right reasons, but who knows what the definition of right reasons even is? Every relationship is about giving and taking. Every person in a relationship is sometimes more of a taker than a giver. Every relationship is fucking different. I don't know. I try not to be judgy of others, but Trainwreck TV kind of appeals to the worst of our nature. A show like 90 Day Fiancé will portray each person as a character that we are supposed to either like or dislike. We are supposed to decide that we know what they deserve, and then the show will keep us waiting in suspense, teasing us week after week with one little chunk of a story at a time until hopefully we get to a satisfying conclusion where the people we like get the good things they deserve and the people we don't like get the bad things they deserve, and we get schadenfreude. Hey, you know what? That is a lot for today, and I have got like an hour more of stuff to talk about. So get some rest, come back tomorrow refreshed, and then let's go into the rest of Trainwreck TV and the law, including the story of Brandon and Julia.